There we go. All right, so this Princeton Hydro report identified areas for us to really fix up the lake. Has a lot of good recommendations, but they're all pricey. It's something I would like to continue myself after I finish up this role and spend more time on getting grants and getting some of these larger projects going. So next thing up is HAB testing. Would love to get that going. It's a little expensive for our budget, but we are currently looking into a grant opportunity for 2022. Alan has been contacted, and I'm working with another member of the team, Bob Averill, on putting together the data they want. That is a photo of our lake. That is one of the ugly sides. That was from almost 10 years ago. That is a spilled paint algae looking thing. This summer or spring, we also extended our sonic cords. Those two dots you see in the center, there's only 2 units, but the light blue circle or light green, the lighter circle covers blue-green algae. And that's really what we want to target. Inside the green circle, you could get a little bit of diatoms being killed, but they tend to do better because of their hard shell. We had an infestation of snakes. Why do I bring this up? Simply because of social media. It's not the place to solve problems, but we were able to look into it. We sent a response to the original person that brought it to our attention, but never heard back. And unfortunately, some of those issues you just don't hear much on. The paddle wheel needed some work this spring. That's Brian Menier. He's been working on our paddleboard for a couple of years, or paddle wheel for a couple of years. He got it working in late May, just in time for the swim season. It's one of the best devices at Cupsaw Lake environmentally. It scoops the surface water out of the swim area, shoots it back into the main flow of the lake, and really keeps our swim area good. Alan and I have both noticed over the years that the swim area is one of the best spots on the lake for water quality. But of course, he started it up and immediately an umbrella got caught in it. And that just brings up the question, or should we be leaving those out unattended? Perhaps in the high summer season, but maybe in early June, we should wait a little bit. The paddle wheel broke down at the end of the year, so we had to deploy our water mover. So that gets set up in late May. Hopefully we never need it, but by August we had it turned on, but it's a great backup. Curly leaf treatments went pretty well. The vendor did use some copper. But enough about the spring activities. It's beautiful around here in our watershed in the spring. This is an aerial view of the park up above us, again in the watershed. We had a nice spring rainbow on mid-April, shortly after the water, or actually the ice turned to water. A little foggy morning the next day, and we start going green. This is really the time where Cupsaw begins to shine. And we get some birds showing up around this time, and Osprey will do some fishing. Here we have a heron actually eating a fish. On East Point lakefront, we had foxes create a little den. And then up in the woods, we get these eastern newts. For all I know, when I pass them on the trail in our watershed, these could actually be coming from Cupsaw Lake. So this is a red eft. It's the end of their life cycle, but they are born in water and they live for a few years in water. Then they come to land for a little bit and then they go back into the water. So it's a good sign to see these little guys running around. This is a baby snapping turtle. Took this picture May 23rd. That was when we put the dirt in the rain garden. Along the shorelines, we have wild iris growing. This is a good plant, sucks up nutrients, gets it out of the lake. And our docks tend to bloom. A lot of lakefront flowers come out. And then as you get into June, the barn swallows come. The last sign of spring as we head into summer is our famous summer bird. When you see that thing on the lake, it means the summer season has begun. It even passed from one owner to the next. So that's interesting. But summer season really is showtime. So Memorial Day kicks off the summer. June 1st is meteorological summer. That's really where the temperatures start to warm and the lake follows. For us, 70 is a key temperature for the lake. I'll get into that a little more, but it's around 70 where blue-green algae starts to grow quickly and diatoms lose the battle over who owns the lake. When our temps get closer to 80 or even above, then we start getting major issues. And most treatments are done during this time frame, June to August. We have had a few carry into September. Summer is really our biggest challenge. It's also when everyone's looking at the lake. So we have 3 multi-year rainfall events this year. I'll get into more of that later. The temps, and when I say temps, I'm usually talking about the water temperature. We approached 80, but we really didn't poke too far ahead of 80. Algae almost took over, and I refer to that as losing the lake. That's when you have so much algae in the lake that treatment becomes almost impossible, and you have to let nature take its course. We also had one of the lowest recorded summer temperatures ever before Labor Day. And I'll get into more of that because we are a watershed-driven lake, so the storms really affect us. I hope no one recognizes this cove, but I have a feeling someone on here does.
I do. It's mine.
Yes. So the coves are filling right now, and lakefronts are getting swamped with muck. We really do need to get some dredging. Hopefully that's something Alan and I can work on down the road. It's very difficult to do long-term planning when you're constantly putting out little fires. But there's really no easy solution, but I think a combination of things can lead to really settling, getting that muck out of the bottom and giving us a little bit healthier lake there, especially in these coves where everything ends up. This is Lingbia. What I like about this picture, it's from July 11th, is we have two blue-green algae presented here. First is the Lingbia. That's that floating mat on top. It's black and bubbly. It starts at the bottom. It's actually a blue-green algae, but it's vascular, meaning it looks like a regular rooted plant. Starts at the bottom of the lake, gets a lot of sun. Then, I don't know, it just breeze or whatever, gets air stuck in it, rises to the surface, and now you got a mat. This is much more common at Erskine due to their better water clarity, so the sunlight penetrates down to depths that it does not at Cupsaw. We have some problems though feeding this. Watershed runoff is constantly a problem. This is mulch. Mulch is little chops of floaty wood that flow into our lake. Mulch will last sometimes up to a week on the surface of Cupsaw Lake. Other types of runoff that we saw just this year, there's soapy runoff that brings in nutrients typically. We can get water main leaks. The picture doesn't do it justice, but this one had a nice sulfur smell to it. There was no doubt. The town was already on it. This was a Saturday morning. They had fixed the water main by the time I had fully looked into it. So they are on top of things, but in the meantime, for a few weeks, the homeowners near this stream could smell the sulfur. Another typical summer cove buildup. This stuff in the center of the lake, you might see it here and there. But when it enters a cove, we really get that mat. This is doubly bad for people in coves because eventually it does settle, adds to the lake bottom there, and eventually it becomes land. That's a path for many lakes. They age and fill up. This is a cyanobacteria slick. So we had a pretty good year, but on August 20th, this was a Friday night. I just gotten back from the shore, went out on the lake and saw this. It was very localized. It wasn't too big of a deal, but this is when we start to get very concerned and call in an expert. This is a typical late summer cove. Another one on our seminar here will recognize it. This is a filling up with Lingbia as well as a few other things coming in there.
Yes, I can recognize that.
Yes. So just some examples of what we looked at this summer. So treatment wise, we had sonar that kills the curly leaf pondweed in the spring. We got 2 applications of that. It's a systemic herbicide. It basically makes the target weed unable to process sunlight by affecting its chlorophyll or something. It's very targeted treatment. Alum is something we just apply on a schedule. It's also called PAC, polyaluminum chloride. It gets applied every 2 weeks during the summer. Ideally, some lakes have alum being applied every day through their aeration system. We don't have that system set up yet. We may in the future. So instead of doing a one-time big dose of alum, we spread it out over 6 weeks. Copper, we hate using copper in the lake, but it can be great and deadly. So we used it 3 times, July 22nd, August 3rd, August 9th, because of some bad blooms that were going on there. It also got used once without our permission early in the spring, but luckily we did not have to pay for that. Blue dye was used twice. I'll get into the 713 application. The 8.3 went much better. Oxidizer works great for targeting spots of algae, but it's about 5 times the cost of copper. Although copper is doubling next year, so that's not something that's good for us. So let's talk a little more about alum or PAC. I'm going to use those 2 terms interchangeably. I prefer alum, but it's called PAC. Our key strategy is to drop the nutrients. We want to starve the algae. We do not want the algae to have a Thanksgiving feast every time it's in our lake. So we put this pack in there, or alum. It binds to the phosphorus, which is the main nutrient we control, and drops it into our sediment. It's a little bit one of the reasons I panic when we mess with the lake level, because we're exposing some of that stuff that we spent a lot of money on to sequester in the lake bed to factors in the air that we no longer control. It's very pH sensitive. We can control pH in the lake. We cannot control pH in the rain. It's a long-term solution. I'm sorry, it's not a long-term solution, but it does work for a number of years. So we have quite a bit of runway still, I think, to use alum in the lake. And again, it can come out at any point. Blue dye, so blue-green algae needs water, oxygen, carbon dioxide during the day, but it really needs phosphorus. We can limit that. The other thing we try to limit is the sunlight in the lake. So blue dye acts to block that sunlight. It's given us some good results, and sometimes it's like it's not there. But the application we had in July washed right over the dam. So blue dye is something in the future I would consider using more in dry summers, and in a summer like we just had, perhaps we don't use blue dye. It's tough to predict storms, but I would say if the water's not going over the dam, we won't use blue dye. Copper sulfate. This is the treatment of last resort. We will not use copper unless we have to, but this presents a few challenges. First of all, copper kills, and it kills very well. It kills all the algae. It gets a little broad though. It's not as targeted as we like. So it can kill snails, and copper sulfate can lead to a fish kill if you kill too much algae all at once, because the oxygen level in the lake will drop. And then some fish die, they get eaten, ammonia comes out, and even more die. But copper really does work. Used properly, it gets immediate results. Treatment challenges. Well, one thing with copper is you want to hit copper early in a bloom, but we don't want to use copper. That's a very tough line to balance, because if you wait too long, you have too much algae. You're going to need to use a lot of copper, which is a lot of money. And then after you kill that algae, it becomes food for the next bloom. So it's tough. Other times you may not treat with anything. The bloom just naturally goes away. That happened once this year. And just sticking with the alum, the key there is making sure we apply it when it's not all going to just flow out of the lake over the dam. So summer highlights, just to go back, we had great early season. The water in May and June were perfect. Well, actually, once we got rid of the weeds in early May, but from Memorial Day till about early July, we had great water, no geese. That used to be a problem 10 years ago. We've, for 10 years, have had great success with that. And then Hurricane Ida came. It was the third of 3 names or multi-year storms. Cleared out cyanobacteria for the rest of the season, which is what made our lake lowering so nice this year. It wasn't a mess like it can be. And September is the best September I can remember in history, and we'll explain why. First, I'll take an opportunity to just show off my photo. Very proud of it. It was my eclipse sunrise. I was up in Nyack State Park up there. But getting back to Cupsaw, this is just a typical summer evening with our diving board, lifeguard chair. Steam fog on June 23rd. That means the air was cold, the water was warm, and the water just evaporates up. They call it steam fog. Bryozoan colony. This is a nice up-close picture where you can see a little bit of the individual bryozoans. They're actually individual organisms that come together. If you see it in the water, it looks like a brain, like a big brain hanging off your ladder or a post. But it's a really good sign for the lake for 2 reasons. 1, it filters the water. 2, it only survives in good water. It does not do well in bad water quality. A rare summer sun halo. You don't get these too often this summer. It's more of a winter thing. Not quite sure what brought that arc of 22 degrees with the little rainbow around it. And I rarely take pictures of people. This was one of the only pictures I could find with people in it. And this was at the start of the adult lake swim. We're also going to cover that. August 21st, a foggy morning. Looks dark and dreary down below, but above Cupsaw is quite the scene. That's a new drone I got that I'm using for a couple of things. Mostly it helps with taking shoreline pictures and lake pictures. This is just one of the many pictures you've seen of water flowing over the dam. It was gushing. The elusive green heron, a good visitor to our lake, another sign of decent water quality, good fishery. When they come by, you barely see them, you may not notice them. I've been kayaking every day on the lake for 10 years, and really this guy only popped up about 4 or 5 years ago, and this is my first picture of it. This guy comes around more often. It's the bald eagle. There's also a juvenile that comes from here and there. I never know which picture is going to work out, but if I put it on Facebook, I get a good gauge. This was the most liked picture of the year. And this one was close behind. It was just a cormorant eating a fish. Greedy little cormorant. Took him about 10 minutes to get that fish down. And a red-tailed hawk, another good sign. He's looking for life in our area. So that's pretty much it for the 2021 year overall. Covered most of this. We will get into a few more things in detail now, especially Cupsaw weekend being at the edge of the disaster and the different storms that we saw. Secchi and temperature trends. This chart, Alan started tracking this data a long time ago. We've been keeping up with it, maybe not as daily as Alan. You'll see a few gaps in the data here and there, but these two lines show you exactly what's going on in the lake. The line on the left is the temperature, the water temperature. The line on the right is the depth. Water temperature is the red line, depth or Secchi reading is the blue line. And for anyone who doesn't know Secchi, it's a disc we drop in the water and we just let it fall down and we record when it disappears from sight. So it's 6 feet, it's winter and things are great. We're seeing 6 feet down. That's seeing your toes in the swim area. When we get down to 4 feet, it becomes a bit of an issue. Down to 3 feet, we start to get worried. And if we go below 2 feet, we all contemplate moving. But in real seriousness, that line that goes across around the 70-degree mark, that's important for temperature because as that red line goes above 70, we're going to lose Secchi depth. So that's why you see from July 1st to September 1st, the red line way above the blue line. That's trouble. We want that blue line above the red line. But this is just how the lake works. If you notice around September 1st, you see the red line take a dive and the blue line trends up. And we'll get a little bit more into that. But first, I want to talk about the rainfall events. We've had 5 major ones. I have 4 of them listed here because one happened last week and I haven't had a chance to look at the data. But we had Memorial Day, a nor'easter, then July, a little shower burst right before a meeting, board meeting. Then we had Henri and Ida, the 2 hurricanes that washed through. These are where we're going to spend our next 30 slides, but we're halfway through the presentation. So why does the rainfall matter? Well, Cupsaw is a watershed-driven lake with a lot of flow in it. We turn over 7 times a year, on average about 7, I said 7 inches. Is that correct? Yeah, 7 inches of rain will introduce about the entire lake volume of water. Now that depends on conditions. If the area is saturated, it'll be 7 inches. If the area is dry and the rain falls over 2 months, we might not get a drop in the lake. Maybe a few drops, but not much. But intense rain events are happening more and more frequently. These can have a drastic effect on our lake because of all the watershed. But before we get to that, let's just remind, if you haven't seen my presentations before, this is our watershed. It extends up into New York, includes Shepherd Lake there, and a lot of the park areas and park roads. If anyone's been up in Ringwood State Park lately, you'll see the roads are really rutted out. That's not good for us. That's Ringwood State Park delivering their silt right into Cupsaw Lake on one of their expressways. And I also want to talk about the way we classify storms. So this is data from 1913 to 1975. It's a rainfall intensity curve. I use this for quick storm bursts to say, did we get a 2, 5, 10, up to 100-year storm? You can see a storm as short as 10 minutes. If you happen to get 2 inches of rain in, well, 1 inch of rain in 10 minutes, you're going to show up on this chart because of the burst of water that fell out of the sky. Now that's really rare. It's around between 30 minutes and 4 hours that the chart becomes useful for us. I also use NOAA has a 24-hour rainfall chart. And if you look at Passaic County there, we're 5th or 6th from the bottom. We get into really heavy, infrequent storms with 6, 7, 8 inches in 24 hours at 25, 50, and 100 year respectively. So these are the models I use when I talk about a 10, 25, 50, 100-year storm. So let's go through the different storms. Memorial Day, we had a nor'easter. We love the nor'easter. 2 inches of rain over 20 hours. That's manageable, spread out. We're not scouring the watershed. The lake temperature went down 10 degrees, delaying summer. Frankly, when you're doing this role, you don't want summer to ever come. You want it to just be cold and gray, like the summer of, I think it was like 1812, when that volcano went off and we never had summer in the United States. Maybe not that bad, but it makes the job a lot easier. But overall, this was a good storm for Cupsaw, and for me, great sailing weather. Then there was a July storm burst. This happened to be very convenient because I got to complain to the board on my way there. Got a little, I don't know, what did I say in here? Whiny, because it was just one of those events where I just know the lake's going to look like hell the next day. So not a good way to walk into a board meeting. But we got 2.58 inches under 2 hours. That classified it as a 10-year storm. We dumped alum in there before the rain. Not the best thing, but not the worst thing. So the alum's in there. A lot of it washes over the dam, but a decent amount of it attaches to the new nutrient and drops it right away. So I would say in hindsight, I would have put it in 2 days later, but it worked. The real mistake, completely on me, was blue dye went in the next day. I did not communicate properly with the vendor. He looked at a rain gauge that was about 5 miles away. Believe it or not, this was a microburst. So the rain gauge 5 miles away showed ½ an inch. Our rain gauge showed 2.58 inches, and all that blue dye went over the dam. Very embarrassing to see a brown lake and then blue dye in it. It was, again, completely on me. But after the board meeting, we talked about the consequences, and sure enough, our E. coli spiked. This is the worst E. coli spike we have seen in Ringwood Lakes in a long time. We still didn't go over the threshold. The other lakes did. But overall, I would say the July storm burst was a bad event because you had stuff like this. Normally, you'd get water through the 3 holes. It came over the top of that dam. A different angle of that mulch runoff, that lasted for a little bit. But let's get to the next storm, the big one, Hurricane Henri in late August. 6.38 inches recorded in over 12 hours. Stephen Fritsky helped me with this one. It was a 50-year storm event. Even on the 24-hour measurement, it was a 25-year storm, but it doubled that, or did it in half the time. Total devastation. Lake rose, Paddlewheel had to be shut off. It was warm water, it didn't even cool us down much. Clarity went down to nothing. But on the advice of our vendor, we put alum in a few days later. It was also on our schedule. That worked great. Got a good flock going. It's tied up the nutrients. And within days, though, because of the residual runoff, algae was coming back. I'll call that another bad event for Cupsaw. I was able to take some storm observations here. He's on here. Todd and I raced our sailboats that day in the rain. Unfortunately, it wasn't much wind. And I noticed after racing, or during racing, I could see the brown water coming in. So I went out in this type of weather. The radar was moving from bottom left to top right, so that red band was coming at us. It makes it real easy to see what our streams are doing. This is what I see during a rain event. So I'm not crazy. I'm not losing my mind when I'm out there in the pouring rain. I want to see this. I want to see that brown streak coming in from a stream. And on the left is our beautiful blue-green algae, giving the lake that nice glow there. I also get to see what's going on at some of the construction sites. This should have that is a silt fence that got knocked over from the heavy weather. And when it gets knocked over, that brown water comes in. That is just pure runoff. Even our boat ramp turned into a bit of a river there. You can see the ripples of water coming down. But it did help prove that our rain garden catches water. So that was pretty good for that storm. But if you look in the top left of this picture, you'll see the beach is underwater. So this was a heavy, intense amount of rain. This is a new pipe. I don't even know where this pipe came from, but it's there and it's spitting out water only during storms. So it must be a quick road thing. Another brook a little further north than the first one I showed, but still on the east side, closer down by the dam, pointing in some bad water. And this is the aftermath the next day. Floating docks, floating boats. That is not just one homeowner with all those boats and docks. Another view from the other side. This is up in the North Cove. We actually got so much rain in that storm. I had to rescue a fish that jumped into a boat. You know it's bad when fish need to be rescued from their own lake. Another picture of heavy flow over the dam. This is from the Henri storm, just flowing nice and steady over there. Dam does a great job with these storms, actually. A lot of lakes, not a lot, but some lakes in New Jersey lost their dams. This cove was an intense problem 3 days before the storm. Nature rules our lake, not us. So when that storm came, it had so much flow, it basically turned this water, what was a problem, into crystal clear. Adita and Audra, your side of the cove doesn't quite get that stream flow. The stream just to the left of this picture actually comes from Shepherd Lake, so it gets a lot of flow. I don't think I have a picture of the Ida, but on Henri, this was us up about 8 inches. We have to shut the paddle wheel off because it basically goes underwater. Despite all that, it's still a beautiful lake. Later that night, this was the sunset, totally clear sky. That's kind of the way hurricanes go. Our last major event that we're going to talk about tonight is Hurricane Ida on September 1st. 5.34 inches, less than Henri, but at the peak, and that's what counts. 1.68 inches in an hour, up to 4.43 over 7 hours. That's too much rain, too fast. The 4-hour rate made it a 25-year storm event. That's 3.4 inches in 4 hours. We rose 15 inches, even more than we did in the previous storm. But the water temperature dropped 10 degrees. We went from 78 to 68, which is one of our lowest recorded temperatures. We stayed cool for a week. Diatoms took over. Overall, I would say Ida was a good event for Cupsaw. It saved our water and gave us the best September in years, but it did cause a few issues. A dock floated up, a lost kayak, couple lost kayaks, and then in the bottom right, somebody's Monarch boat. Someone actually pulled that out of the stream, and it's now behind the haircutting place, whatever's there, coiffures, something like that. But it did some damage. Boat ramp on the side, boat ramp underneath. I stuck the phone underneath. It really carved that out. Town came in. Swim lanes. This was a mess too. Beach erosion. I mean, that, I don't know if you can see it, but in the middle of that picture is one of our irrigation pipes. We lost inches of sand on that part of the beach and it flowed down. We even had a mud invasion going through the men's room. This place was an absolute mess and I took off for the weekend. I had a sailboat race. So you can imagine my shock. Our volunteers are frankly amazing. I was gone for 48 hours and I thought the clubhouse was destroyed and everything looked like hell, but by the Fab Friday, everything was back in shape. Where was I? Out sailing. So this is a picture I took, nothing to do with Cupsaw, but it is the first photo I've ever won. It was in a race photo contest and it was the winner. So I like to include that here. So now we're back to fall. September, best conditions in recent memory. I'm going to keep saying that because too often we focus on the negative side, but it really was. If you got to the lake in September, you enjoyed it. We had cool water, no treatments, diatoms were dominated, water clarity at 3 feet or more. And the water was warmer at the end of the month than at the beginning, thanks to Ida. So we hit that 68 low, got up into the mid 70s, 74, and then went back down to about 70 at the end of the month. Lake lowering. I'm going to actually talk a little bit about it because we had 2 of them this year, but we shouldn't be really lowering it every other year. We should probably plan some way to lower it at a less frequent level or less frequent timing. But if we are going to lower it every other year, we should not be doing it over 6 feet. It's very tough to go past 6 feet. We got lucky with the water conditions this year. Because we had the best September in a long time, we didn't have a residual algae bloom. Because when you drain the lake during an algae bloom, you're concentrating that algae. And we'll get to some of those pictures later. But we do need to fix the valve or put in something else that allows us to maintain the level at 3 or 4 feet, like most lakes do. Not everything's bad. Everything has a silver lining. It's a good time to clean the lake bed. Suzanne got a bunch of volunteers. I think Audra, you were out there, a bunch of people. I really shouldn't go through names because I'm gonna leave people out, but a lot of volunteers got into the lake bed, cleaned it up, but we also get to see some secrets during a lowering. That picture I showed you earlier of brown water coming out of a construction site, well, it has a real effect. There is the pile of sediment there. And imagine not all of it's just settling right there. How do we know this? Because we can watch people pumping mud and silt into the lake. This is yesterday. There's not much you can do about it. You got to get the water out of some of these holes. But this just shows you, you can really see the effect of just a little bit of pumping out the silk. This is not poison. It's not sulfur or anything that it's suspended clay from pumping out. We have a lot of clay up there in that area. You can also see the secrets. This is someone who perennially complains about the lake. They're not a member and they call the lake a cesspool. Well, now we see what they've been putting in the lake, a lot of lawn furniture and stuff. Sometimes docks don't get tied out right, so don't leave your dock like this. Flotation will float out the bottom. And again, I'm not here to call anyone out. What I'm here is just to help people who may have a dock themselves untie it when the lake gets lower, at least loosen the line so you don't lose your flotation by keeping it suspended. This is what an empty lake looks like. This is the lowest. I think we've lowered it in 10 years. And here's another slide. So we get to see things that we're normally not seeing. Alan, myself, and a few others, Todd, a few other sailors will notice that big island because our sunfish get stuck on it. This is really, if you ask me, this is all from the park, a little bit from our streets, but this goes through parking lot C and a lot of the woods roads up in the park. They all drain right out here. And if you look at Turtle Island, just below it is really that sediment pile. It is getting removed as we speak, or at least during the day. Some learning opportunities, and there are always plenty of these. We could have, my leadership itself is very, let's put it, full of opportunities for improvement. So better organization. I tried my best, but we have a lot of volunteers who are ready to step up, and I'm no good at calling on them. We really need a better communicator to run the committee. I'm more of an egghead who wants to sit in the background. So it was a great team. I feel it was underutilized, and it's definitely part of poor communication. Communication is not my strong point, at least not in day-to-day communication. I hope you find the slideshow a decent method of communication. Our awareness is increasing, but not quite fast enough. I need to work on that a little more. I need to get more information out to our membership. So let's go a little more in depth. First of all, large projects. I don't think any of our large projects moved at all. We didn't move the needle on dredging, watershed management, grants, or coordinated testing. If anything, we went a little bit of a step back on testing. The July rain event, I already mentioned it. Some of that alum went over the dam, and the blue dye was a complete waste, $3,000 over the dam. Believe me, it sticks with you when you dump $3,000 into the wrong water body. Cupsaw weekend. Now, this isn't necessarily a failure, but we got close to it. So our alum timing, I think we could improve next year by scheduling our alum to be applied the week before, a few days before Cupsaw weekend. Let's give it everything we got for that one weekend. It's at a bad time. Cupsaw weekend is traditionally the first or second weekend in August, and that's prime time for the max bloom. And if you looked at our copper treatments, they were all centered around Cupsaw weekend, not because of the weekend, just because that's a bad time of year for the lake. So we have some ideas there. And an idea though would be, we might want to fix or rehabilitate a motorboat. So I went out Cupsaw weekend, my wife was swimming in the event, and I really wanted her to do the lake swim. So where you see all the squiggly lines, that was an algae slick. That is the depth of that algae slick. Got up around 5:30, 4:35, sometime in the morning. By 6:30, I was done. We broke up the slick. It didn't look good, but by the time I came back around 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, talked to Denise, the algae had sunk. So in the morning it floats up, and I just helped it sink away. And we were about an hour away from canceling the adult lake swim. Not many people will know that because of the algae conditions in the end, but it went off and we had a decent weekend. So idea for next year, better communication of rain events. He now uses our gauge if we stick with our current vendor. Combining alum a day or two after copper worked great for us. We did that after Henri, and we had a pretty good success. But then again, when Ida came through, it made everything look nice. We can start those sonic devices early in the year. I thought they would kill the diatoms, but based on the diatom explosion in September, that's not the case. I'd like to monitor phycocyanin. There's devices the lake can purchase for about $3,000. To give you an idea, that's the amount of money I sent over the dam with blue dye. We could have had one of those devices, and that can give us early bloom detection. I'd like to keep the water moving more and more. We have a little conflict of interest because we do not want the water. We don't want too much electric in the water. We don't want 220 running all through the coves and lakes to keep these water movers going. So that's interesting. And again, we really need to stop lowering the lake. We're not doing ourselves any favor. You go a few feet, you're fine. You go 6 feet, 8 feet. I think this year we reached 9 feet. we're getting into the borderline ridiculous levels of lowering the lake. These are levels you only take a lake down to when you need to work on the dam. Eutrophication is death. So it's all lakes die. If you look at the bottom picture, that's cultural eutrophication. That happens in decades. Natural eutrophication also happens, but it's typically over centuries. We as humans speed up that process a bit. Why? Because we pour phosphorus into the lake, suspended solids. The phosphorus feeds the algae who dies and goes to the bottom. So Cupsaw is a dying lake, but that's not unusual. That's not unique. Almost every lake in New Jersey is undergoing some form of eutrophication. Sorry, I'm looking. Oh, Heather, you will learn a lot about that next week with Steve Souza. So, but we take steps to prolong its death, not reverse it. That's really the key to watershed or to lake management. Nutrient loading is a worldwide problem. It's the core of our problem. We're feeding this algae. Our lake needs to go on a diet. Some people have heard that line before. Cupsaw will continue to spend more money actually on the lake each year unless we get to the root causes, and that is a difficult process. So really we have two outcomes, which is we wake up and we do the long tedious stuff of starting to improve our watershed, or we just keep treating the problem, but then we could get into a loop where we are spending more money to treat the problem, but it's not helping much, and we're getting a lake closure that reduces membership or something else, and increasing costs and decreasing membership could be a problem. So what's the future hold? Climate change is real. We will never debate the causes, but it's real. Those charts that New Jersey made from 1913 to 1975 are wrong now, because this year alone, we got 3 multi-year storms. I still have to check the late October numbers. I don't think that was a multi-year storm because it was spread out over a few days, but it was 5 inches or something. Another thing of climate change is we're getting long, hot periods in between our rains. That's not good either. You want 3 or 4 days of cloudy, slow rain, not 12 hours with 4 inches and then 2 weeks of sun. Fish kills will be more frequent if our summers get hotter. We haven't seen too much of that though, at least judging by the temperature of the water. That's been pretty stable. And you know, the whole ecosystem could collapse if we see our environment. Now, I'm not just talking about the watershed. The actual environment that we can't control continues in this course, which is New Jersey's getting warmer and our storm events are getting more frequent. We're not made to handle, our infrastructure in our state is not made to handle that type of climate. So really the ugly truth is we haven't shared everything we've seen. We've had fish kills, algae slicks, leeches, invasive plants, none of this in 1 year. Spiking E. coli was this year, but it's been over probably the last 12 years. We've seen lots of different types of challenges. It does not have to continue, but we really do need more than just thinking in lake. And it may, I say this jokingly sometimes, but it may be time for a pool. If we want to preserve a full swim season, it's something to consider. It's if we're not going to be able to do the changes we need within the lake, and I say it because I grew up on going to, not grew up, but I went to Franklin Lakes a few times as a kid. That's Indian Trail Club. They actually put in a pool themselves. Let's take a look at some of the ugly stuff that we've seen over the years. This is a spilled paint bloom, one of the worst we've seen on the lake. You look at the top of the picture, there's a homeowner with 2 chairs, and this is what they looked at. What I can't capture in this picture is the smell. Spilled paint blooms do smell because they present on the surface. Usually what you're seeing, almost everything you're seeing in this picture is dead, but underneath it is the live stuff. Here's the live stuff, pea soup, another common way blue-green algae presents itself. Pea soup can take the entire lake over, and it can do it in a matter of 48 hours. Blue-green algae, certain species can double their population in 4 hours. So when you put 2 to a power of 8, 12, 16, it grows fast. Bubbly slicks, I don't really know what makes the bubbles. My guess is this was a morning shot based on the darkness of the trees in the background. Morning shot, and the algae was breathing oxygen overnight. One of the worst algae bloom I'd ever seen on the lake was very localized. It was this white slick. it's one of the only times up. I guess I was on my paddleboard. My shadow looks like I'm standing up. I didn't even know I had a paddleboard back then. But anyway, that algae slick was noxious. You could really smell it. And just before everyone gets too crazy about this stuff, the smelling the algae, blue-green algae is not a silent killer. It's not some mysterious thing lurking in the background. That's what you get in public pools, not a lake. You know blue-green algae is a problem because you will smell it and you will see it. There's no clear lake that's going to have a blue-green algae problem. You will see something that looks like it does in the picture. Between you and me, I will swim in that, but I will not drink it. This is a little flaky chip of blue-green algae. Again, it's most of what you see in this picture is dead, but it's certainly unsightly. And then when we have the aeration running and algae going and it's not quitting, you get this swirl. So that darker brown stuff's been dead a while. The light glowing green stuff might be alive or it might have just died. We treated this pea soup and it ended up being a fish kill back in 2015. 2014, we had some clumps. We actually have some of these in the lake right now. And then this year I got called, wasn't Cupsaw, but Hickory Pond just below us had a major fish kill. So what you're seeing here is a combination of blue-green algae on the surface, duckweed, and all those little lumps are dead fish. It's best to get them out of the lake as quickly as possible. I advise some of the homeowners in Hickory Pond. It's a long story, but where does all this lead? Don't worry, it's okay to swim in our lake. For the most part, it's fine. I just have to show some of the things that we fight against because this is why we need to be alert as a community. But really, when you look at it all, it's the lowlights from 10 years. If this was a public pool, you'd be looking at Snicker bars or baby roosts floating around, brain-eating amoebas and all the other stuff. And their E. coli counts are way higher than a natural lake. Unlike a pool, our bad conditions are obvious. There's no mystery. I still believe and maintain that swimming in Cupsaw Lake, even during some of our bad blooms, is safer than pool water. Even in a bad year, though, we'll only go about 6 weeks with that maximum bloom cycle. I mean, that's like the worst year that you would get about 6 weeks. And even then, during that 6 weeks, it's not 6 consistent weeks of bad bloom, but it's moving around the lake and stuff like that. On the plus side, we have much better monitoring communication that we have in the past. We try to do that with Cupsaw Watch. We've got the board involved with sending out emails. And also, I've looked at all 3 lakes. Our E. coli, which is one of the things you can't see, but our E. coli is the lowest of the Ringwood lakes. That is not a problem for Cupsaw. It is for the other lakes. So don't be depressed. I know I've hesitated sending those pictures for many years, but I've seen this community rally to many causes. You know, I was amazed at the beginning of COVID when Cupsaw Cares, a couple of guys from the lake formed this group and they went and got thousands of dollars and bought thousands of personal protection equipment and gave it to first responders across northern New Jersey. It was an amazing call to action that was answered in the middle of a pandemic. These are people with families at homes and jobs, and they're putting all this together. The response out of Ida this year, 48 hours, the clubhouse went from wreck to gleaming. It looked better after the cleanup than it did before the storm even hit. And you know, around here, we just need someone to properly ring the bell. I'm not that person. I don't know if Alan did best you could. I don't know if you got the call answered. You certainly developed the entire environmental committee. I haven't chased everyone away yet, but we certainly need to ring that bell again because it does get answered. But we really can make our own future. By the way, these 2 pictures I just added, they're from Halloween. We're at a crossroads here. We have a lot of momentum just on the attendance here in the seminar. A lot of people that care about our lake and are willing to do the things that make it better for the future. But really, if you look at my last bullet point, you know, the question is, do we want to just keep maintaining our lake for ourselves and our kids? Or do we want to gift them a lake that they can bring their kids in? That answer is going to be out of my control, but I am certainly ready, willing, and able to help anyone who wants to step up and take on that role. But to get a little personal here, it's been 10 years now. 10 years, not just for me, but for my family. So they live with a psycho, wakes up every morning at 6, goes in the boat, looks at the lake, comes home sad, happy, who knows. But as the lake goes, so goes my mood. And I think there's a couple of changes we need to make. And number one is the environmental chair should be on the executive board. The environmental chair should be involved in every decision that's made on the lake. If you're talking about the tennis course, it doesn't matter. But if you're talking about fixing a wall, a project that is on the grounds, if you're talking about almost anything lake related, the environmental chair should be included, because at this point we have a lot of budget, a lot of money being spent in the lake, and we don't want to work against ourselves on that. You know, one of the things that's been challenging as environmental on the lake is projects for the grounds or certain things get funded, but for the lake environment, we're often told, let's go find a grant. Well, it's tough to get a grant when you don't have some base funding, seed funding. You get matching grants and stuff like that a little easier. I don't know of a reserve fund for dredging or something. And I'll probably bring this up at the next board meeting, that, you know, even a formal sign off on large projects from, at least from the committees involved, as well as the environmental committee, might help prevent things from crossing goals or possibly hurting the lake. As an environmentalist, that last point is where I said many other parties resist helping lake. Unfortunately, and I ran into this today, as an environmentalist, which I hate the term, it doesn't quite fit, but when you're concerned about the environment, you're pretty much viewed as a pain in the ass to other people. They have shiny little projects they want to get done, and you're the guy coming in there and telling them it's not going to work out that way. So anyway, I'm a fighter. I got to stop fighting with the friends and neighbors, because that's just brutal, and get back to just fighting algae and geese. I really like that, and we don't have geese anymore, so I'm apparently really good at chasing things away. But just to give an idea of how long and how much the family is paid for it, this is my daughter. She's a teenager now. She's not a little 7 or 8 year old, whatever that picture is from, helping me pull cattail out of the lake. That cattail ended up growing back anyway. But the recent example was just the lake lowering again, the second time. Just found out about it a little late. Here's a turtle. The reason you don't want to lower the lake this late in the season is our turtles begin to burrow into the mud. It's called brumating. They actually don't hibernate. They just go really slow. They breathe out of their butt. It's a whole complicated thing. But long story short, this time of year, they're starting to find their little homes. And if we drain the lake after they find their little home, they die. Other examples, I was trying to figure out, there's no good way to put it, so I'm going to go over this pretty quickly. But when someone sends me an email and tells me the lake looks like crap, guess what they get back? I tend to escalate. Sometimes I feel like Sisyphus. I'm just pushing that rock up the hill, and I think our whole committee feels that way at different points. You do a job, we're on our 3rd rain garden, mind you, so we tend to create things or do things, and then the next season, and this is just part of nature, part of the cycle of events, that rock's at the bottom of the hill and you got to push it up again. And that really, the pushing goes from June 1st till the end of September. So we're going to move on, and I'd love to be able to be part of that team or even lead it. That helps us with the watershed work, because after you worked on the lake for 10 years in the water, you realize the problems come from outside the water. We can treat them in the water, but it's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on a wound. You really need to get in there and cauterize it, or even just fix it somewhere upstream. So what's needed here? Not too much. We got a great environmental team. It's been a pleasure, a humbling experience in just 1 year to manage the team that Alan put together. We got the protocols defined, and believe me, I may not communicate, but I can put together thousands of documents, no problem. I really don't, I don't brush my teeth without a plan. And if I do, I forget something. I forget to floss or something like that. You'd be surprised the reminders that are in my house. But we have these things fulfilled. We got the responsibilities on the team mostly filled. We really need a new face to communicate. It's not, I tend to introduce fights, not relationships and team building. So someone to really take our cause and communicate with the memberships. You wouldn't need to be a science expert. You really need to be just a team builder and a good communicator. Someone that can translate the things I talk about in this slideshow and make it a little more easier for people to go. you're not going to get too many people willing to spend an hour of their night to hear about the complexities of blue-green algae and all that stuff. One of my favorite quotes is quotes from General Sherman is on here. There's no chance of me doing it again. Maybe Alan will. I bet you we could woo him, but all right, maybe we could woo Lucy. But really, it is necessary to get some new blood in there. I think you do the job for 10 years and you begin to just, like Sisyphus, you just start to lean on your old habits, and what we need are some new ideas. I have to give a special thank you to all the volunteers. Most of you on this call have volunteered in one way or another for the lake, and I will never attempt to list them because I will leave people out. So just know that I appreciate the work. Cupsaw really appreciates the work, and you really go through without recognition. And of course, that is another point I would work on or improve in the future. It's just getting those volunteers to be recognized in one way or another, maybe a dinner or something like that. I don't know, even a tailgate in the Cupsaw parking lot with COVID things, but something would be nice to do that. But anytime I need help and have picked up the phone or sent an email, it gets answered and the help comes, and I appreciate that. But really, with Alan and I removed from the leadership of the environmental committee, it's really our last chance for continuity. I'm not going to say it'll just end, but it's would be nice to keep the momentum going without any type of break in it. And there's plenty of people to get up there and help you out. Paul's on the call tonight, and he can confirm that the last thing the board wants is me to keep going to meetings, especially after a hard rain event. It's not the calmest thing. But let's finish this slideshow off with some points that are good. So I love the lake. I'm entangled with it. And if you study quantum physics or anything, I truly believe that our quantum particles do get entangled. It's a long thing, but I feel the lake when it goes down, when it comes up, and I created Cupsaw Watch because it really took about 7 years till I got that feeling of the lake, and it's a beautiful, wonderful living organism or community of organisms, trillions upon trillions of little different creatures working together with thousands of fish and hundreds of birds eating them. And nature will take care of our lake. We just need to be there to give it a little help to mitigate what humans are doing to it, which is our watershed. And we can start today, or we can wait for the next major issue. I was actually really upset when they closed the lake, but I thought the next year would have a huge community rally around, let's keep Cupsaw Lake open. And it was for a year or so, but then it kind of fades away. So let's just get into a couple pictures. My pictures are amateur hour. Dave Gardner can take some pictures. That is a very difficult picture to take. I love it. It's a picture of me sailing after one of those nor'easters in the winter. We have fun on all seasons on the lake. It can be a beautiful spot. Somebody snow blew the lake, compressed the snow, and it made some nice bricks. We have scenes like this in the winter on the ice. We don't want to lose this. You want a nice full frozen lake to skate on, to walk around and see scenes like this. Hopefully we get some swans back. They're pretty and nice looking, but but they're actually not native. They're from Europe. Picture on the right, a little steam fog in the morning coming up by the chessboard. Even the rock when we drain the lake can be a really nice scene. It was Halloween, thought I'd throw this one in there. But really, these are the things that motivate me. At the end of a long, beautiful, fun day at the lake, you might see me hanging in the southeast corner of the lake. I'll give away, that's the secret sunset spot, because right where you see the sun is a little gap in the woods, and you can see it almost set on the horizon. Cold, dreary nights, the lake still has a beauty to it. It really does, in almost any weather condition. This is the end of a nice skating this year, February 17th. We had pretty good ice this year. Top left corner, you'll see someone's hockey rink. Off to the right are a few more that you're not seeing. So that was 145 slides in just over an hour. Well, we started late, just an hour on the dot. So what I'm going to do is opening it up to any questions. Let's see, everyone's muted, so feel free to unmute yourself, or I can unmute you, or you can raise your hand, or you can add it into chat. Your heads may be spinning, or you may have no questions. Alan, you're unmuted.
Yeah, great job,
maybe
Tom. Real
not.
tour de force.
Oh, my volume went off. I'm sorry. Have you guys been talking the whole thing and I'm not hearing you? Go ahead, Alan. Sorry.
Yeah, no, great job. Real tour de force. I think this should be mandatory for everybody in Cupsaw to see.
It'll be on YouTube, minus this part. Anyone else? Now that my speakers are working, I realize I talked for an hour straight, so my speakers shut off. They thought they weren't active.
Thanks for everything that you do, and I'm sure you're going to continue to do. We really do appreciate it. You're not ignored. I think that you've marveled a lot of people in the past couple of years, and we appreciate it. I do agree that it probably should be a position on the executive board, and I'm sure, you know, if you and I talk, there's probably some agreement on a few other things that need to be changed to help it work a little bit better. But yeah, I really appreciate all the work that you've done.
Yeah, but I think you could agree that I'm a little too much of a bull in a china shop sometimes. I think a more rational speaker and would help represent our interests a little more. And like you said, you're right. I'm not going anywhere. I'm on that lake every day, whether I have a position or not. Anyone else? No one's gonna. Heather, you want to move to Cupsaw and take over?
I think I have my challenge set out for me at Lake Owasso.
Well, feel free to reach out. Alan Fideli is also on this call. He's also a member of NJ Cola. They have a meeting a week from Saturday. So
I'm planning on being there.
all right. I probably won't be, but Alan will be. I'm on the agenda though, so we'll see.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I don't really go to those meetings because they're on a Saturday sport day for me.
But no, this was really, really helpful. Very, very informative. And I think your long range, now that you've been doing it for 10 years, you know, and we're just really at the beginning stages. It's helpful to hear what's worked well, what hasn't worked well. And
Yep, you can call me. I'll tell you the real ugly parts I've missed, but no, I think I covered them all here. It's a beautiful lake, and I think we can keep it that way with just a little bit more moving the needle in the direction of protecting the watershed. All right, well, we'll call it a night then. Thanks everyone for coming out.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, great presentation.
Feel free to reach out on Cupsaw Watch or email me if you have any questions. And take care.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
As I quoted, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Thank you for all your work. Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah.